So I asked 20 different Uber riders how much their Uber cost.
What do you want to know? How much you paid for this ride?
Because it's got to be like 10 or 15 bucks.
Yeah, that's what I'm curious, because Uber never tells us what the rider pays.
And then I told them what I earned as the Uber driver.
What do you want to know,
would you mind
bro?
if I looked?
Yeah, man.
Yeah, thanks, man. I appreciate it. $9.99 it looks like. Cool, awesome. Gotcha.
Okay, so
yeah,
what
just
is
out of
that?
curious. So that's how much you paid. Sorry, that's how much you paid, and I'm curious because I never see that. I get $4.34 from this ride, so I'm
That's
curious.
it?
Yeah,
$4?
isn't that nuts? That's what I was curious about. I don't know what
That's
Uber
fucking
takes.
insane, dude.
Isn't that nuts? Isn't that crazy?
Are you fucking kidding me?
More than 50%?
Does anybody have a
take.
$5 like?
Oh, dude, I'm not saying for that.
No,
I'm
I know.
not saying- I'm
I
not
know
saying-
you're not. I know you're fucking not. That's fucking bullshit,
Isn't
dude.
that nuts?
Are you fucking
Yeah,
kidding
isn't
me,
that crazy? More than 50%.
dude?
And I don't think people understand how genius, or diabolical, depending on how you want to look at it, Uber's payment system is.
If you wouldn't mind sharing what you're paying, because the app shares it, but it's like a week later, and honestly, a lot of drivers don't believe it.
Yeah, it was 42.
$42. You want to guess what I get from this fare?
What do you get, like 30%, 40%?
$20.
16.
Stop it.
Yeah, isn't that crazy?
That's insane.
Isn't
Less
that
than
nuts?
that.
They pay your gas
Yeah.
or no?
No. Yeah,
Oh
this
my
is
God,
my
that's
car.
insane.
Isn't that nuts?
At the end of this video, I will show you the complete breakdown of all 20 rides, but the one thing I want you all to remember when you see that and while you're watching this video is that every single one of these rides is given by me. As in, I'm using the same app, it's the same driver, I'm driving the same car, providing the same service. There is nothing about the quote-unquote product that Uber is providing that is changing. So how on God's green earth can they get away with constantly changing not only the price of rides for someone trying to order an Uber, but also how much they take from drivers? This is the percent of what I got to keep from the fare from 4 rides, all given on the same day. Same service, no surge, nothing that would give any reason for this to change. You know, other than the fact that Uber is using a high-powered algorithm to figure out just how little they can pay drivers with every single offer they give them. I mean, look at these 2 offers that I got from Uber, literally minutes apart. The difference, whether you want to judge it by dollars per hour or dollars per mile that they're offering to pay me, is insane. Remember, same service, same driver, same car. There's not even a surge. It's just the price gouging, wage theft operation of Uber. This all starts with the fact that when I give an Uber ride, I have no idea what the passenger has paid for the ride.
This was like a little over $10.
Gotcha. Like
Yeah.
10, like a little over like 11 or 12, or like 10 and some
Like
change.
10 and some change.
Gotcha. Okay, yeah. Because I think I got like $4 and something from
Okay.
it. So
That information isn't made available to me until my weekly earnings statement comes out a week after the ride was completed. What's more is, the number Uber gives is the total of what all passengers paid over the course of the week. If I want to know what a specific ride I gave cost to the passenger, I can't even access that on my phone. The only way to see that information is logging into my Uber account on a desktop, which is crazy considering that Uber's entire business is based on a mobile app. Plus, it's 2025. Uber making that information accessible on desktop only is their way of saying, we don't want you to see this. I mean, what's next? You can only call their customer support from a landline? Come on. The natural question is, why does Uber make that information so hard to find? It's not like the cost for the rider is changing. Well, it's the same reason that Starbucks doesn't show you how much it costs them to produce your cup of coffee, because if every day you went to Starbucks and saw that you were paying $6 for materials that you could buy yourself for $1, you might be more inclined to go get yourself a Keurig machine. It's important to understand that, because something that most people don't realize, something that even the most seasoned Uber drivers don't understand, is that Uber and Lyft don't look at their drivers as partners or contractors. If they were actually partners, like they call them, it would be a no-brainer to share with your partner what the ride costs before they give it. Instead, Uber's literally lobbying politicians and suing state governments to make sure that they don't have to share that information. What people need to start realizing is that Uber and Lyft look at their drivers as customers, and every ride they offer to them is a product they're trying to sell them on. The difference is that instead of Starbucks trying to figure out the most they can charge for a cup of coffee before the price starts turning people away, Uber is trying to figure out how little they can pay drivers before the price starts turning them away. You ever go to request an Uber and it takes forever to find a car? What Uber is doing is sending out offer after offer to different drivers, gradually increasing the price until someone takes it.
Because originally it was 47, and then nobody picked up, and then I had to cancel it twice, and then did it again, and mysteriously it was another 15 or 20.
Oh, that's crazy. How much, if you mind me asking, how much was it there?
This one?
Yeah.
I think it was in the 70s.
No way, really?
Oh,
Would you mind looking at the exact fare? Because
Yeah,
I'm actually trying to, I've been asking passengers how much they're paying, because I think I'm getting $24 from this.
73.93.
$73.93. Wow, that's
Nice
nuts.
round number. And
Yeah,
you're only
right.
seeing $24 from it?
I think it was 24.
But it gets even more sinister than that. Recently, both Uber and Lyft are running what are essentially PR campaigns bragging about their newfound transparency with drivers. Now, what does that transparency look like? It looks like this. A week after driving, Uber and Lyft send a statement showing the total amount that all riders paid, and with it, a cute little pie chart that makes you think you aren't totally getting screwed as a driver. I knew right away this was marketing bullshit when they described the cut that they take as what it takes to run their business, as if it's a break-even enterprise. Like, come on, Uber. You don't need to hide the fact that you're trying to turn a profit and then on top of that, pretend that you aren't. It's not a bad thing to want to make money. But that's neither here nor there. The promise of a 50% split is where the diabolical genius of Uber lies. And to understand this, I beg you, for 1 second, just forget whether or not you think 50% is fair or not. Instead, what people need to focus on is the fact that Uber controls the offers they give to drivers. It's not like it's an open marketplace where any driver can look and see what rides they want to take. And it's not even something where I can give a good ride and then that rider can request me again. And despite being classified as a contractor, we're not even able to set our own rates. So what all this means is that Uber can cherry pick the offers they give to drivers, making sure that rides like this one are counteracted by rides like this one. And that's where the PR campaign of saying we pay drivers 50% is total BS. Now, stick with me here. I know you might be thinking, well, if it works out to be 50% in the long run, what's the difference? The simple answer to that is, if there wasn't a difference, don't you think Uber would just split every single ride right down the middle? Wouldn't that just be much more simple and easier for everyone? The reason they don't do this, and what you have to realize is, Uber drivers aren't always on a ride. As I was doing this project, sometimes I was stuck waiting 20, 30, or even 40 minutes for a ride. The one night, the time in between requests was so long that I was able to watch about half of a fourth quarter of a college football game. A game I may have bet on. And as you can see, a bet that I won. Shout out to BYU for a hell of a comeback. And what I found was that after I gave a good paying ride, it would take longer for me to get paired with another ride. But after I gave a low paying ride, Uber would pair me with another ride much quicker. Basically, when I accepted a bad paying ride, it signaled to the algorithm that I am willing to work for less, so they'll keep giving me rides. And that's happening every second of every day across the entire world with every Uber driver on the app, giving Uber the ability to basically auction off rides to the lowest bidder. Now, I'm going to show you two rides that I gave, and they just so happen to be back to back.
I've been asking passengers.
It was like 981.
981. Gotcha. Did you get like a discount or something?
No, that's usually normal with it.
Oh, really? Interesting. Because that's actually the best split I've gotten. So I got $7.25 of that. So that's actually really good.
Oh, good for you.
Uber Uber gave me 75% of this fare. And an important side note, I think it's funny that they report this as a 5-minute ride, but conveniently leave out the fact that it took 12 minutes for me to get there. You know, I wonder how many drivers look at something like this and think, wow, $7 for 5 minutes, it's like $80 an hour. Not realizing that accounting for the time it took to drive there, plus the time I spent waiting to get the request in the first place, plus the gas and expenses that come with driving your own car, when you take all that into account, all of a sudden that rate is much closer to $15 an hour. And again, to reiterate, the crazy part is that this is considered an exceptionally good fare in 2025, at least in my market. So after Uber gave me a very good fare, a fare in which they only took 25%, it signals to the algorithm that I'm out of balance. So the very next fare they offer me, they're going to take more because their goal is at the end of the week to make sure that I'm either at 50% or less than it. Because if I got less than 50% of the fares, Uber can simply make up the difference. What they do, if my earnings from all of my fares aren't 50%, they'll send money to make up that difference at the end of the week. But if I got over 50% of the fares, it's not like I have to pay Uber back, and therefore Uber feels like they're overpaying me and missing out on money for themselves. So because I just got a fare where Uber kept only 25% of it, the very next ride they give me, they're going to take much more. Now, if they simply took 50% from every single ride, instead of getting $38 from these two rides, I, as the driver, would have gotten 10% more. And again, you might be thinking, what's the difference if Uber is just going to send you that money later? The difference is, and the reason they don't just split every ride down the middle, and the reason they don't tell drivers the rider's fare until the end of the week, is because if I started earning 10% more in real time, I might be more inclined to sign off the app. Most drivers set a goal for the day or the week, and the faster you hit that goal, the more likely it is that you'll log out. And a major part of Uber's operation is keeping as many drivers on the road as possible at all times. That way, riders always have a car minutes away. So by controlling the offers that Uber gives to drivers, they can basically dangle different size carrots in front of drivers as they are working, and the size of the carrots they choose to dangle are intended to maximize each individual driver's willingness to stay on the app. And look, I recognize that employers paying employees just enough to keep them happy is nothing new. But what's new is the fact that they are doing this in real time, by the second, for individual rides, for individual people. It's sort of like how Instagram and YouTube Shorts and TikTok show you videos intending to keep you on their platforms as long as possible. That's exactly what Uber's doing with people's livelihoods. Let me put this 50% PR BS in really simple terms. Imagine Uber says to a driver, if you work for us, we'll split a pizza with you. But they don't tell you how big the pizza is. And they're constantly manipulating the size of the pizza, trying to figure out just how small they can make the pizza and still have you work for them. And it doesn't matter to them because when they aren't splitting the pizza with you, they're splitting it with another Uber driver giving a ride. So Uber is getting the same amount of pizza regardless. And there's nothing drivers can do to go out and get more business or get the same rider to request them again or set a higher rate or anything like that. And again, this isn't about if Uber makes money. Profit isn't bad. Greed, for lack of a better word, is good kind of thing. The point I'm trying to make is for the people that drive for Uber or anyone who works for these gig work systems that are all set up similarly. You will never break through the ceiling that Uber has on your earnings. If your earnings are higher than the norm, you will start getting less offers. It's like the opposite of minimum wage. It's a maximum wage. And to be clear, this doesn't apply to every single city because every city is a different market. And no matter what market you're in, there are nights or weekends or times of the year that are certainly out of the norm and you can earn much more than usual. But over the long run, you have to understand the Uber algorithm is operating in a manner that is trying to find drivers that will continue to drive for the least amount of pay. I think this issue is extremely important for everyone to be aware of, because the way corporations can use algorithms like this to essentially pay people the least amount possible as it pertains to a specific location at a precise point in time, well, it's pretty wild to think of the implications of that if it's spread to other sectors of industry. Now look, as a former math teacher, I know numbers are never the most exciting thing, so feel free to skip ahead if you want to see what I actually earned driving Uber, which is not included on this spreadsheet, as well as the general conclusion you can take away from these numbers. Here are a few major takeaways that I found interesting. The estimated time of a trip that Uber gave me was always less than how long it actually took, as in they always made these rides seem quicker than they actually were, which made it seem like I would be earning a higher hourly wage. Which you might think, if they're just off by 1 or 2 minutes, maybe they're rounding down, what's the big deal? Well, it adds up. If you look at the total from all 20 rides, that's a difference of 46 minutes. And remember, that was only over 20 rides. Imagine if I was giving 100 rides or 500 rides. It adds up, and over the long run, it can really affect drivers who are trying to estimate their earnings with every offer they get from Uber. The other thing you should note is that my driver hourly wage column is my on-trip wages. So in between rides while I'm waiting, it's not only that I'm earning $0 during waiting, but technically, since my car is running, I'm actually losing money. That's why at the very bottom it reads 501 minutes. That's the total amount of time I spent Ubering during this project, whereas the 401 minutes is the time I spent on a ride. So that means that for an hour and 40 minutes, I was just waiting for an offer. 20% of the time, Uber didn't even have an offer to give me. And remember, this is during peak times. And for the sake of this project, I was accepting just about everything they gave me. I mean, I wasn't going to drive to New York, but otherwise I was hitting accept, and they just didn't have the offers because there's so many drivers, which is why they can continue to pay less and less and less. Now, I'll show you my actual earnings in just a second, but a big part of this project for me was exploring the relationships between Uber's earnings and the driver's earnings on trip, because you have to remember, that's the genius of how Uber works. When I'm on an Uber trip, I'm earning for Uber, but when I don't have a ride logged on and waiting for a ride to be offered to me, I am a no-cost asset to Uber, a driver to be called if needed. And they are still earning that money elsewhere with another driver. So that's where I got the $34 an hour. I thought it was really interesting how that's just about the same number Uber pushes out in advertisements about what drivers can earn, before expenses, of course. And this is simply what I earned during the time I was driving, based on the time that Uber estimated it should take me to complete the trip, which, remember, was always shorter than reality. But when you take into account the time I spent waiting, all of a sudden, my hourly drops to $24 an hour. And remember, Uber's hourly doesn't change, because when I'm not giving a ride, it doesn't cost them any money. And this is really important. I almost didn't want to share my actual earnings because it looks a lot better than it actually is. That number isn't real, in the sense that you have to remember I was only working 8 hours over the course of the week, and I was working the busiest hours, a Friday and Saturday night and a Monday morning. So those are going to be the highest earning times. And then also, it's not including the expenses like gas and maintenance on your car. And again, it goes back to, there are times where you can still earn money driving Uber, but I think the really important takeaway here is how Uber pushes out that number of earning $34 an hour, when in reality it's closer to $24 an hour, and then again, that's not including expenses. So that's where the Uber hourly could be a bit misleading, but I thought it was interesting to see how it compares to the driver hourly. Not just the ratio between the two, but just simply the fact that, the Uber app is running the same way no matter the ride, but the rates change drastically. And again, it's just like, it's the most clearest form of price gouging, and I just don't know how this is legal. Like, what am I missing here? This is insane. All that said, there are still certain times where Uber can be a really good opportunity. If you want to figure out how to make more money as an Uber driver, you can watch this video here. Thanks for watching. See you at the next one.